Tony, thank you for being here. Lynn and Linda, thank you for being here. This will be a cozy little group in which we can talk about health and wellness for educators. You know, it's been one crazy year and we don't have to belabor that point because we know it firsthand. Tony is here. Anthony Pollitt is a retired gentleman enjoying life in Dubai. He is an accomplished tennis player, I recently learned, and he's founder of Eating Elephants, which is this website with lots of information, and he's going to be referring to some of the resources there in his presentation. All things food and you, diet, environment, active moving about. This is the essence of TESOL career path development. If we don't take care of our bodies, we can't take care of our minds or our souls. And in this presentation, Mr. Anthony Pollitt is going to be teaching us some interesting and valuable resources for taking care. Tony has a master's in applied clinical nutrition. And so he comes to us both with teaching experience and with a great deal of expertise and knowledge about nutrition. Tony, over to you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for the intro. Well, hi, everybody. Obviously, I'm Anthony. Sometimes when I first do these presentations, especially to teachers, they say to me, well, what do you know? Well, actually, I've been a teacher and I still am a teacher. And I was a language teacher in my early life. And in fact, I still think I'm a language teacher because I think the skills you learn in helping other people communicate, write, express themselves in another language requires skills that are or can be carried over into any field. And they certainly, with me, carried over into this field. And I think one of the biggest things I learned was, Anthony, slow down. I do tend to talk quite quickly. So just to go through, this is very much everything. So yes, I have a master's in clinical nutrition, but clinical nutrition, and also I did functional medicine, they deal very much with the physical and the psychological. And that's what I'd like to touch on in this talk. Now, these are my qualifications, the blah, blah, blah of who I am. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. You can look them up in this video if you rewatch it or on my website. Now, here's a disclaimer, and let me shrink myself down so my face is not blocking everything, that you actually know who's talking. By law, because I belong to the Royal Society of Medicine, I have to show this. And I have to explain that what we're talking about here is from an information and educational point of view. We're not trying to prescribe any particular practice to a person. This is very general. Now, an important part of clinical nutrition and functional nutrition is that it needs to be personalized. So please keep this in mind when I talk about things. Often what you need to keep in mind is, have you ever been with somebody who takes a certain medication or does a certain thing and it works for them? You try it and it doesn't work for you. And that's quite normal because yes, we are all human beings. Well, I hope we're all human beings. We're all human beings, but we're metabolically different. We're genetically expressed in a different way. Just look in the mirror, look at the person next to you. We're not the same. And that's the reason why, if you go to a doctor, there are so many different medications for particular conditions because people react differently. So please just keep in mind, I'm talking generally. The more specific stuff, we will get onto shortly. Now, this is probably my most favorite picture. Yes, it is the most horrible. So yes, this is me. And this is also me. Quite a few years ago, I was rushed into hospital and I was given a quintuple heart bypass. I was completely and utterly shocked. I was teaching in university. I was teaching native and non-native speakers. I was helping them with their writing, their presentation skills, all this sort of thing. And it really took me quite by surprise. I exercised really well. I was very much a gym bunny, going to the gym, 3 to 5 times a week. I thought I ate really well. My mum was a home science teacher. So, I cook. I'm one of those rare males that loves to cook. And I thought I cooked really well. So this really shocked me. And as part of my recovery, I wanted to know, why has this happened? What can I do about it? And what can I do to make sure in the future that it doesn't happen again? And of course, after an operation like this, you're on a buffet of medications. I didn't want that, because I knew enough to know that the longer you're on medications, there's a chance that you need to take medications after 3 to 5 years to deal with the side effects of the medications. And also over time, that can actually limit your mental ability. You know, can you remember things, your clarity of expressing yourself and that sort of thing. And I didn't want that to happen. So I did 2 years pre-med, then did the master's in applied clinical nutrition, then did my functional medicine certification, then medical ketogenesis, and a few other things. So anything I talk about is actually based on science. It's not hocus pocus in the air, which, you know, you find a lot of it on YouTube. So you just need to be a little bit careful. But everything I talked about is very much grounded in science, and that's very, very important to me. So let's get started. Well, here's another picture. You know, we're one of the very few creatures in the world that eat differently from all the others. Most living creatures eat because they need to survive. Yes, we do too. However, there's one major difference with us. We also eat for social reasons. Think about it. When someone dies, you eat. When someone gets married, you eat. When somebody graduates, you eat. When you feel miserable and you're not hungry, you eat. So that's the problem. Now, don't get me wrong, I love food. You know, it's one of the passions of my life. But we need to put things into a context. Traditionally or historically, our environment controlled how we ate. We didn't need to. So we ate according to the seasons, because we could only eat when that particular food was available in that season. If there was a lot available, there was a lot, and we'd store some. If there wasn't, we'd starve a little bit. We hunted for our food. We planted our food. We harvested our food. We cooked our food. We stored our food. We actually worked for it. Does it happen now? No. Thanks to the age of industrial revolution, and also now the technological age, food is available from all seasons at the same time in great abundance. Look at our supermarkets. Look at the fast food restaurants. How hard do we work for our food? We pick up our phone, dial, and it's delivered. The most work we do is lifting our hand up and down to talk on the phone. That's the problem. So there's actually an overabundance of food. So where in the past, our environment controlled the amount of food we had, and that worked reasonably well in some cases and not so well in other cases because you had malnutrition and that sort of thing. Now, we talk about malnutrition, but we talk about nutrient malnutrition. There's enough food, but usually it's the wrong kind of food. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. So now I want to introduce you to this core concept. It's called the triangle of life. I quite love the thing of a triangle, no beginning, no end. If you look at that triangle, there's no starting point. Of course, I'll start at the top with nutrition because that's my field, but it's just such a beautiful triangle. And what I'm going to do is look and talk about the 3 different aspects of that triangle. And hopefully you'll see it's this overall look. Now, some people use the term holistic. I tend not to use the word holistic because there's so many different understandings and misunderstandings associated with that word. So I just say I like to take the overall view of the 3 different points of that triangle. So what are these points? Well, to start off with, I just wanted to show you this. This is a drawing version of Hirsch's never-ending staircase. When is it going up? When is it going down? Where does it start? Where does it finish? And if you look at the people on the staircase, often they're quite confused. So if you look at this conundrum of our lives, you know, we've got all this food. What's good? What's not good? I'm stressed at work. I'm stressed at home. Can I pay the bills? And we just seem to be running in this eternal circle. And that frustration builds up. That can lead to psychological issues, which leads to gut issues. Yes. Gut issues leads to mental issues. There's this unfortunate running around in a circle, a bit like the hamster on the wheel. You know, how can you get off? Do you get off? What do you do about it? And that's what I want to touch on today. So I'm going to look at the first one, and I put this first because primarily that's my field, nutrition, food, and diet. Now, be careful of the word diet. I never use the term going on a diet, because when people go on a diet, they have about an 85 to 95% failure rate, because you try doing something that's too different from where you currently are and too different from what you can carry on with. And you basically, the term fall off the trolley, you fail. And when you fail, you go, oh, why bother? So I use the term diet in its original and proper meaning. So what I mean here is diet as in what you eat. So just take a step back and think about it. What are you eating? Is it whole food? Now, the way to work it out is the more processed or the more pre-prepared a food is that you purchase, probably the less good it is for you. That's a problem. And if you think about all the fast food issues, okay, yes, it's fast, so fast food, but also fast bad health. What can we do about it? And we'll touch on that. When you eat, now this is a huge one. You know, this shocks a lot of people, but we're not actually designed to eat 3 times a day. We're designed to eat when we need to, when we're hungry. This whole thing of, oh, I must have breakfast, then I must have lunch, then I must have dinner. That really is for the normal working class, you know, executive person, is a 20th century on thing. Prior to that, we ate when we were able to. And when you eat, okay, do you have to eat all the time? And this is where this issue comes in, and when we celebrate, when we're happy, when we're sad, when we're bored, we tend to eat. So this is an issue here too, and we touch on that later. And how you eat, okay? Are you on the run? You just basically shove it in your mouth, eat it as quickly as possible, down it goes, and you've got indigestion, and then you're rushing around. So your heart rate's up because you're rushing around. You then stuff food in, often not the right kind of food, and then your system goes into overdrive to try and deal with that food within you while you're rushing around. So you actually give your body a double punch, okay? You're actually working against yourself. And then supplements. And please notice, I've got a question mark at the end of supplements. And I'll explain that here. And it's a wonderful saying, supplements do not turn mud into gold. Mud is mud. Or more specifically, supplements don't turn bad food into good food. And it kind of sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised the number of times I have clients and go, well, yes, I have fast food. We know the famous burger brand. We know the famous chicken brand. I have X and Y, but I take supplements. I'm okay. No, you're not okay, because supplements don't turn bad food into good food. If they did, we wouldn't have the problems we're facing today with obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. Now, metabolic syndrome is classified as pre-diabetes. Quite frankly, if you have metabolic syndrome, you have diabetes. It's just an arbitrary number that was decided. So, you know, that's why with supplementation, what I talk about is take a step back, fix up your foundation. Once your foundation is okay and you start eating in a better way, then depending on who you are, your lifestyle, any medical issues you have, then supplementation may be necessary and have its place. So just need to be a little bit careful there. But to help you put into focus, the pharmaceutical industry, the drug industry, is one of the biggest money-earning conglomerates in the world. Guess what's second to that? It is now the supplement industry. So, you know, and where do those supplements come from? A recent test was done on some supplements from a particular country, and they were found to contain between 40 to 50% ash and wood chip. So is that good for you? No, it's not. No. So you just need to be a little bit careful there. Now, the next one is the environment. Now, please keep in mind with this triangle, these are all mutually inclusive. One affects the other. Doing something in one area affects the other area. They need to work together. So in the first part of the environment, we look at our physical environment. So for example, the building you work in, how clean is the AC? When you're walking around outside, the car fumes. Maybe you've just had new wallpaper put up or painted part of your house, the fumes from that. All those things can actually come into you and be toxic to your body. Now, some of those things you can change, some you can't. Now, obviously the things you can change them. But what about those things you can't change? We live in a modern society. We have to walk outside. There are cars outside. What we found is, and there's just years of wonderful research on this, when we deal properly with these three areas, it strengthens the defense mechanisms of the body to deal with those things. Now, on an everyday basis, a healthy body can deal with those things. I'm not saying you don't get sick. We all get sick. We're living organisms. But the body can actually help heal. Sometimes it needs a bit of help from your doctor, but it can help heal and restore. That's with those things you can't control. Next is the psychological environment, the relationships with your workmates, the relationships with your partner, your children, those sort of things. Wondering, stressing over, can I pay this month's credit card bill? All those things stress the body. Now, just being alive is stress, and we must have some stress because that keeps the body active and going. Walking puts stress on the body, but it's a positive stress. It's when you have that low-key, unnecessary, long-term stress. It's really hard on the body. Now, a little bit later, I'm going to give you a link to my website where I give you a couple of techniques to how to deal with that low economic stress. And one of my favorite, which has wonderful research done on it, is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. So if you think from your brain, you have what we call the vagus nerves. Basically, it's the nerve superhighway. It goes from your brain down here, down the sides, and it goes to every organ of your body. There's about 100,000 nerve endings on your organs from the brain. So think about it. There's 100,000 nerve endings down here in your gut. You're stressed, you're in a bad mood. Maybe that's why you have an upset tummy. Or you've eaten something that you don't quite like. From your gut, there's 5,000 to 6,000 nerve endings that go back to your brain. So you've eaten something that doesn't suit you. What's that going to do? It's going to affect your brain. So everything else may be fine. You've eaten something you don't like. It's upset your stomach. You go into a class. You're in a bad mood. That's a problem. Now, let me go back to the 4-7-8 breathing technique and experience as a teacher. Have you ever had that class where you think, oh no, I'm teaching those students again, and your blood pressure goes up? Or you've just had a fight with your partner or a fight with your best friend. And what do you do about it? Well, one technique, and there's lots of techniques, don't get me wrong, meditation, even prayer, all those sort of things can actually help bring it down. But what I like about the 4-7-8 technique is it just crosses all cultural and religious frontiers. And the 4 is, to the count of 4, you breathe in through your nose, you hold to the count of 7, then you breathe out to the count of 8. And you just do that 4 or 5 times. And there's been a series of interesting studies that with very hypertensive people that react like A-class personality, it can actually bring their heartbeat down by about 20. So it just works. And it's one way of giving yourself the mental break from the situation. But that's just one technique there. Then next we have active movement. Now notice here, I don't use the word exercise, and I don't use the word going to the gym. Now, let me be clear. If you exercise regularly, if you go to the gym, good on you. If you're okay with that, 10 out of 10. But there's a lot of us that don't like the gym. And unfortunately, the gym culture has become just that. It's a culture, and it's a huge money-earning industry. And people become trainers, most with really good intentions, but they've got to earn a living. So I tend to stay away from the word gym. Now, even on the website, I give you some examples of appropriate exercise you can do. But here is my huge caveat. Exercise should be age and current health status appropriate. And that's absolutely key. Okay, I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not 30 anymore. I'm way above that times 2. Okay, so it has to be health status appropriate. And a good way of measuring that is if you've done some exercise and you've finished, and I come up and talk to you, if we can carry on this long, involved, detailed, beautiful conversation, you haven't exercised. You've just dawdled. You've just fluffed around. If I come up to you, however, and you're so out of breath, you want to leave the room, you have to go to the bathroom, you think you're going to vomit, you've over-exercised. You've put your body into quite a high inflammatory state. However, if I come up to you and talk to you, and you can answer me in 3 or 4 word sentences, you then have exercised to your current health status. And that's your measure. And that's what you need to be aware of. And that's very different from, as opposed to, I don't want to exercise, or I can't do that exercise. This is whatever you're doing, that is your measure at that time. Again, let me repeat myself. I cover that in a little bit of the course, which I'll show you later. Now, I said I've got very involved in the whole genetics thing, because what are we? You know, we're millions of genes and protein strands on these genes. That's genetic. That's, you know, basically what we're born with, what we've inherited from our parents. That's genetics. And then often you hear people say, oh, but I was born that way, and use it as an excuse. Sorry, it's not an excuse, okay? It just explains who you are and where you are and what you are now. Now, in the intervening years, what you've done to yourself, how you've treated yourself, or according to circumstances, how your environment has treated you, that maybe affects gene expression. So this is where we get onto this area, which is nutrigenetics. And that is why when certain people, they like certain foods, they don't like certain foods. Why? That's part of the genetics. And sometimes nutrigenetics can actually be an element that stops people absorbing certain nutrients, and that causes health effects. It's something they were born with. Now, the area I've got into a lot lately is nutrigenomics. And that is where, and it's especially important in this current environment, the type of food we eat and the choices we make, that food in turn can actually support our bodies to recover, stay healthy, and maintain what we call homeostasis, which is a good balance in our overall health. Now, okay, you look at those 3 points and you go to yourself, well, what do I do about it? Now, 2 terms I just would like to bring up to you is single nutrient fixation and single solution fixation. And sometimes, you know the expression, if I could get $1 for every time someone asked me this, I'd be a millionaire. I'd be a billionaire. Okay, people say to me, oh, what's the one thing I can take that will fix everything? No, you know, there's not one thing, sorry. Or single solution fixation, what's one thing I can do that will solve my current situation? It doesn't work that way. We are this wonderful, complex, integrated living structure. So it's a group of things we need to do, which I'm going to move on to. Now, if you look at things, what's the balance? Well, one of the things we use is nutrition, or what you eat, when you eat, how you eat, is 60% part of the change. It is the major part of it. Wow. And think about it. If you find someone's body, if you chop off the head, chop off the legs, chop off the arms, that torso, that's part that's left in the middle, that's the major part. And if you could open it up like a pair of doors and you look inside, 80% of that space is taken up with what's required for nutrition and digestion to send nutrients out to the rest of the body so the rest of the body can function. So it's actually quite a major part. 20% is our environment and changes we need to make to our environment. And I find it quite exciting too, the whole environmental move now from the physical environment, electric cars, solar power, this sort of thing, over to the psychological part of it, the whole drive for health and wellness. Health and wellness for the individual, health and wellness for our immediate society around us, health and wellness for the wider society. And it's really good to see this rising awareness of this important aspect of our lives. And then the 20% is active movement, getting age appropriate and health status appropriate exercise. Now, the interesting thing is, even things like gardening, the horrible housework, okay, done in an appropriate way can be active movement and can fulfill that requirement, but it needs to be planned and structured. So we've gone over all of these things. So where do you start? Sometimes you look at yourself and you think, oh, there's all these things. It's so confusing. What do I do? Well, the concept we use is make one change. Now, we don't say make one change and then stop. No, make one change, because when you make a change, it takes 6 to 8 weeks for that change to become a habit. When it becomes a habit, it's no longer a change. So then make the next change. Then when you do that, 6 to 8 weeks later, that second change is no longer a change, it's become a habit. Then make the third one. And then you find if you make 3 important changes in your life over, let's say, that 24, 25 week period, you've actually made quite major changes to you. And that's quite important. And where do you make those changes? In the 3 areas I've just talked about. Something to do with your diet, something to do with active movement, something to do with environment. And depending on who you are, that actually might be quite a small thing. But also it's that psychological effect of making that change, of doing it. There's a great talk on YouTube. I think he's an American colonel or military person, and he gave an address to graduating students. And he was quite brave. He openly talked about the depression he suffered from. Now here's this high-ranking military person. And he said sometimes when he gets up in the morning, he just says, I just need to do one thing. So he says, I get up and I make my bed. And he said, I've done it. And he said, that sets him right to actually do the next thing. It's part of that make one change, which is actually quite important. Now, I quite like this picture. Have you ever made that list of things to do? You know, those 10 things, you know, especially 10 things you want to change in your food, or 10 things you want to change in your environment, or 10 things about exercise, or even a mixture of those. Then you get to the end of the year, you look at the list and the list is still there. You haven't crossed anything off. So, you know, that's why I say don't, in terms of, I'm not talking about the to-do list for things you need to do at work. That's different. I'm talking about, you know, your diet, your environment, your active movement. Don't make a to-do list, because often you look at it and you go, oh, I failed. Yeah. Okay. Have you ever gone to the supermarket? You've got your shopping trolley or basket full of your goods. You go up to pay for it at the cashier, and then on your left side is the men's magazines of these Adonis gods, body beautiful. You look on the other side, there's these magazines of these beautiful women. Then you think of yourself and you go, ugh. Guess what's underneath those magazines? It's the chocolate. It's the sweets. And that is by design. Okay? So just be aware of that. So just go back. This is why we talk about make one change at a time. Don't do the to-do list. Scrap the to-do list. Now, I've talked about that. So I just want to give you some tips and tricks on what you can actually do. Now, please remember, I'm talking generally. If you have any questions about it, at the end, I'll have my email. Please feel free to email and ask me. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
I just want to tell you, you do have some very cute comments in here. As you talk, you're generating a lot of ideas.
Oh, wonderful. Now, the first tip and trick is your hand. Your hand is the perfect food measure for you. You know, when you look at, people talk about, oh, you know, you've got to get the right portion sizes. Well, what's a portion size? And what's a portion size for a small person? What's a portion size for a big person? Well, look at your hand. Your hand is anatomically perfect for you. The way to look at it is, if you're sitting next to somebody who's maybe bigger or smaller than you, put your hands on the table and have a look. If the person's bigger than you and their hand was on you, you'd look deformed. And if they're bigger than you and your hand was on them, people would laugh. Okay, so your hand is the perfect size for you. That is your go anywhere, take anywhere, non-detachable portion control. So how do we use it?
Yeah.
Well, first, there's your whole palm. Now, to start off with, at least once a day, you should see these. So we're going to talk about the palm, the fist, sorry, the hand, the fist, and the palm. We're going to talk about that. So, sorry, let me go back to this one. With this one, okay, that's the amount of vegetables you should see on your plate, at least once a day, okay, according to your hand. Now, when I say like this, I also mean you put your hand this way and go from the wrist to the tips of your fingers and a natural curve. Now, I'm not talking about one piece of lettuce, 2 slices of tomato, and 2 slices of cucumber. No, no. I'm talking about dense, okay? That and that. Nice and dense. That's what you should see. When we come here, if you look at the fist, it's like a potato, okay? These are the carbohydrates, okay? And now, if we're talking rice, and I can say to people, oh, that's how much rice, and they go, oh, that's not enough rice. Well, if it's white rice, no, it's not, because white rice and a bowl of sugar are the same thing. Yeah. Would you eat a bowl of sugar? No. But if you eat lots of white rice, you have just eaten a bowl of sugar. Congratulations, or not congratulations. So this is when we say, if you're used to white rice, start mixing in some brown rice or some quinoa or something like that, and build up the bulk, okay? Now, or any other similar things. Now, I often find people go, ugh, brown rice. It's usually because they cook it wrong. If you cook brown rice long and slow, it actually becomes quite fluffy. Now, getting used to it, yes, that is an issue. So what we say to people is, okay, in the beginning, 3/4 white, 1/4 brown. As you get used to that, remember the one change, this is one of the changes you can make. As you get used to that, okay, half. Then your taste buds change. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for your taste buds to change, and gradually the change is made, or find other sources. Then we have the palm. Now, we'll start off with this. It's the palm like this, and also the thickness of the palm. Well, that is the size of, if you eat meat, beef, lamb, whatever, that's the amount of meat, which is about 100 grams. Now people go, oh, that's not enough. But if you've got the other two, the hand and the fist, you'll find it is enough, because in the vegetables, there's a lot of fiber. Fiber fills you up. Also, what's in the vegetables helps the body process the meat inside your body. Now that's the red meat. If it's chicken, because chicken's a lighter meat, we go up to about the first or the second knuckle, okay? Then if you want fish, like especially cold water fish, salmon, tuna, that sort of thing, it's the whole hand, because it's a much lighter meat. If you think about when you've got fish on the plate, just with a fork, you can break it up, it's quite easy. Now, what if you don't eat meat at all, okay? What we say is if you're vegetarian or vegan, and you're using different sources there, again, go up to about the first knuckle. Okay, some people have what you call, the nut loaves, that sort of thing. Now, think of that together with the hand. There's your plate, not the person next to you, not your partner, not your children, it's yours. That's your plate. Now, going back to the full palm, what kind of vegetables should you see in it? Now, so many vegetables in the world, I can't go into them all, okay? But look at the traffic lights. Now, I know some places use the traffic lights as in red, don't eat, green, eat. They say, eat according to the colors of the rainbow. Well, I find when I mention to people, eat according to the colors of the rainbow, next thing, there's this huge discussion on what are the colors of the rainbow? And you get totally distracted. So I say, eat according to the traffic lights. So there should be lots of green in those vegetables, okay? Not just your lettuce, but things like kale, spinach, that sort of thing. And it should be predominantly green as in go for it. It's really good for you. The orange, it softens and beautifies the plate. And think of the range of orange. Orange goes from yellow almost up to red. Think of the range. So have those on the plate, and then your red, that really brightens up the plate. And it's very interesting to note that often the stronger the color of the vegetables, the stronger the mineral and vitamin content. It's quite a good visual indicator to use. Now, the next thing is, you hear lots of people saying, well, the problem is people just eat too much. Stop overeating. Well, how? Okay. And if we go back to what I first said about, remember, historically, our environment controlled our eating. Our environment still controls our eating, but there's so much in our environment now because of things like the Industrial Revolution, the whole age of technology, this sort of thing. Our environment now is too big, it's too open, it's too wide. We need to now exert control. So how do you do it? Well, ta-da, eat according to the hand. So remember this hand, it goes with you everywhere. What about the famous buffet? Okay, those, buffets are lethal because you walk into this place and there's just this sea of food in front of you and you want to try everything. And how many times have you gone to a buffet and left it feeling absolutely ill? Now, when your stomach fills up, empty, your stomach is 18 centimeters long. It can expand to hold up to 4 liters.
Wow.
Now, if your stomach ever gets to 4 liters, you're probably going to be in hospital having your stomach pumped. You'll be near death. Usually when your stomach gets to about 1.25 liters, it sends a message to the brain saying, stop. Unfortunately, that message from your stomach to your brain takes about 20 minutes. If you get that message that, oh, I'm full, and you're still eating, you've overeaten by 20 minutes. And sometimes if we do that a lot, we override that mechanism in the brain. So that's when we need to come back to the hand. You go to a buffet, make sure your plate is according to your hand. You serve your own food up at home, it's according to the hand. There is your take anywhere, lovely food measure. And look, you got one, you got two. You use one at a time, not both together. Okay? So it's actually wonderful. And interestingly enough, I've had certain clients that just the thought of making a change is horrible. I just got them with their current diet just to eat according to the hand. And they've done it and they've started improving their health. Then they're more receptive to me in about making certain food choices. Okay, so you know who you are, you know what you're like. Okay, so think about that with the hand. And then there's the other measure, the traffic lights. With that full hand, do you see the colors of the traffic lights in your vegetables? Now, sometimes people go, ooh, I hate vegetables. Well, look, I'd agree with you to a certain extent. Many of us are very good at boiling our vegetables to death. No, learn to saute them, learning to lightly steam them, have some of them raw, okay? There's a whole learning process there. And if you go to my website and look at a few things, that will help you there. And then sometimes you get up in the morning or during the day, you've got that niggly little hungry feeling, but you actually don't need to eat, but it bothers you. A glass of water with lemon juice in it. Because lemon juice is wonderful. There's a certain substance in our body called ghrelin, which causes the hunger. And I like it, ghrelin as in growl, the growling of the stomach, it's ghrelin. What lemon juice does, if the ghrelin is very light, it knocks it on the head, okay? And it's especially good in the morning. One thing I say to people is when you get up in the morning, usually the first thing you do is you go to the bathroom, you release body water, then have a glass of water with lemon juice in it. And you may find that it might be a couple of hours later or even 3 hours later that you think, oh, yes, I do need something to eat. So you eat when you need to, not because you do it out of habit.
That's great advice.
Now, there's a few things I haven't talked about, but I've inferred. And I want to go over those very quickly. Am I okay for time? I've done about just over 35 minutes. Am I okay for time?
Yeah, you're at 42 after the hour. I want to hear what you didn't talk about, but maybe we can take a question. There's so many cool ideas here. I don't know. Yeah,
sure. Well, actually, the inferred part actually might answer some of the questions. Well, look.
Carry on.
One thing I haven't talked about is calorie counting. And you hear it all the time. People say, oh, I've got to have 1,800 calories a day, or I've got to have 3,000 calories a day. Calorie counting is a 20th century development. And I'm afraid to say, for the most part, not completely, but for the most part, a myth, okay? You've got to look at where are your calories coming from. Take a step back. Because if your calories are coming from rubbish food, it doesn't mean anything. But if you eat according to the hand and you get the right substances into your body, calorie counting is not an issue. So, I get so many people, they use all these apps, they put their food in and count the calories, but they don't look at where the food is coming from. Now, here's a very good example. You get the big burger from that particular shop. Your double burger like that is about 540 calories, okay? Then you get the smoothie shake, okay, that's 540 calories. Then you get the double-sized chips, that's 480 calories. Then you've got to have dessert after that. So you get the double chocolate muffin, that's 440 calories. And then, of course, you've got to wash it down with a cup of coffee, your caramel macchiato from, those coffee shops. That's 240 calories. Well, guess what? That's 2,240 calories. You've met your calorie count. But where have those calories come from? They're the wrong source. It's a high processed sugar source. And when you eat food from a high processed sugar source, your body's searching for the vitamins and minerals it needs to process everything else to support the body. If it doesn't get those, within about 40 minutes after eating a meal like this, the ghrelin comes out again and makes you hungry because the body's saying, get me the right stuff. If you misfeed it again, it releases it again and makes you hungry again. So there's the problem.
Wow.
So, your carbohydrates. Now, people say to me, oh, I'm on a low carb diet. The only time you're on a low carb diet or a no carb diet is when you're dead. Guess what? Vegetables are carbohydrates. Vegetables are complex carbohydrates. Okay. Now, we just misassociate carbohydrates with rice and sugar and that sort of thing, which they are, but they are simple carbohydrates. What we need is the complex carbohydrates, which cause our body to work to get the nutrients we need, break it up, and process what's left of the carbohydrates, the fats and proteins for our body to use. That is the vitamins and minerals. Now, what about supplements? Remember this? Okay, supplements don't turn bad food into good food. Well, look, now I'm talking generally. I'm not talking about people with specific, recognized medical conditions. I'm talking generally. Guess what? Whole food is nature's best vitamins and minerals. I'll put my head to one side so you can actually see that, okay? So that is nature's best vitamins and minerals. It's the whole food. So I say to people, take a step back. Revise what you're eating and the way you eat. And I spend a lot of my time helping people do that. I set up menu plans for that. And do that. And then often find that most people don't need all those vitamins and minerals they've been having. Now, after 2 or 3 months, depending on the person's current health status and what they're going through psychologically, what they're going through physically, they might need to be supported by some supplementation. But I tend to say to people, don't self-supplement, okay? Because usually you're doing it from the wrong place and from the wrong standpoint. That's my website, eatingelephants.life. And on there, I do explain why it's called Eating Elephants. I do not advocate eating elephants. It's not that, okay? But there's a video there which tells you why. Now, I have a course on there called All Things Food and You General. What I'd like to do is, for those of you that have watched this video, I'd like to give you free access to that course. There is the code, MyHealth2021Gen, okay? And basically the first 100 people that sign up, if you use that code, you get 100% discount and then use that course, okay? Now, there's another one on there, which is called the professional one. Now, I say to people, if you just want the information or follow up from this video, please just take the code, enroll in that one, and then there's lots of short videos, a few little fun quizzes, and you get a certificate at the end for that. The professional one, that was set up, that has CPD UK certification, and that's a little bit expensive. It has more rigorous testing. The final certificate with the proper testing actually has a CPD logo on it. And I tend to find people use that if their companies require them to do professional development. I've also used it with students in college prep programs, EAP, ESP programs, and some institutions I've worked with, they will use this. It's on a learning management system, the Thinkific learning management system. And then often if I work with an institution, I integrate working with them, maybe a couple of assignments as well for them to get a college grade. The assignments aside, if they complete this one, they get the certificate with the CPD UK logo, which means it can go on their CV, their resume, and it can also go on as part of their college application process. But as I said, look, just use this one if you just want to find out the more general information.
We're about 2 minutes, so we can have time for questions.
That's me done.
Yes, I thought so. Good, good. Oh, goodness. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Tony. I learned a lot. I know that
Let me pull myself up so you can actually see me better.
Really, your energy is so positive, and I'm grateful to hear some very good tips. There were some questions that came up along the way. One was on that breathing, 478. Richard Boyum is with us, and I invite you to mention, Richard, what you were saying in the chat.
No, it's just a nice synchronicity. I'd never followed 478 until a couple of weeks ago. Now it's appeared up in various articles and talks and so on 4 different times in the last 2 weeks. And I've tried it, and it doesn't work. I found I was frustrated because prior, I'm a long time meditator and I've done a lot of different things, and a lot of the breathing was very numeric, like in 4, hold 4, out 8, or in 4, hold 8, out 4. So there was that kind of a rhythm. And I found 478 weird, but now I don't try to link them. I just do 4 and go like, that's the end. Then I do 7 over, and then I just do 8. And now I can do it with a kind of a flow. But I'm curious why the odd numbers. Any idea?
Well, I was involved in a few research things, and it just appeared with they use this group of people, like men, women, different ages. And it just found it's just something about that sort of number. And what I remember from the article, now I'm dragging from the back of my brain here, was there was something about the 7 and 8 that it just caused that, almost like that mental block, like especially if you're stressing over a situation. There's something about, I think it's counting more than 5. So they fell onto the 7 and 8 seemed to work best. And it just seemed to cause that mental break from that, or partial mental break from that current mental stressful situation you're in. Now, of course, it does depend on the stressful situation. I think the 478 is given over more just for those everyday normal situations. It's not recommended for like if there's semi-psychotic situations or life-threatening situations, that sort of thing. It's just one of those everyday techniques. And it just seemed to be something about that over 5. So they fell onto 7 and 8. That just causes that mental block that just frees it, releases it. But also, when I talked about the nerves going down here, that actually it interrupted the nerve impulses going to the heart and just helped slow that down, which then slowed down blood pressure as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, good. Oh yeah, give it a
Go to
shot.
PubMed. I think there's quite a few articles on PubMed about it. And I
And
think in
there was a question
professional course, I've got some articles that you can actually link to.
Thank you.
Little lag there. Sorry, Anthony, for interrupting. The other one was from Linda on fasting. Linda, did you want to unmute there? It's all this rage lately about fasting.
Yeah, the question I had, Anthony, first of all, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I've really enjoyed it, and I can tell you speak from your heart. But I wanted to know, there's such a thing as intermittent fasting, and people are talking about don't eat past 7 o'clock, and then in the morning, don't eat until 11 or something like that. What is your take on all of that?
Well, I definitely think there's a place for intermittent fasting, but you need to put it in context. So if we go back, excuse me, remember we talked historically about how environment controlled us? And the interesting thing is, when our environment appropriately controlled us, because food wasn't all available, we actually fasted naturally, because sometimes food just wasn't available. So I definitely do think there is a place for fasting, and I practice fasting, but you need to put it in context. So what are you fasting from? So when you're not fasting, what are you eating? What's the quality of your eating? Why are you eating? And then I find now, and it's a little bit easier now because I work from home, I work for myself. I was introduced as being retired. What I say to people now, my true retirement is when I die and you put me in the ground. It's the last nail in my coffin, because the thought of retirement is a complete anathema to me. But I found now, I now only eat when I begin to get hungry. Then when I eat, the quality of what I eat is really important. And just, I found naturally, I basically have 2 meals a day and I eat within the 8-hour window. But what I eat suits me at this stage of my life and the health status I'm in now. So it's, yes, I think there's a really strong pro to fasting, but how are you fasting? When you're not fasting, what are you eating? What is your daily life like? So there is a place for it, but are you doing it correctly or appropriately?
Great.
Really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, just a good example. A couple of months ago, I had a client who, she said, oh, Ruth, look, I'm fasting, but I'm not losing any weight. But when I looked at what she was eating, she was having fast food twice a day. So, you know, and it's kind of like, well, you just, you know, you're temporarily running at a fast pace away from the fast food. Then after you fasted, you're running very fast towards the fast food. You know? So it was completely, and this is what bothers me. No, for another example, I trained in medical ketogenesis, and that was mainly for patients with epilepsy, Alzheimer's, MS, that sort of thing. And going with intermittent fasting is the ketogenic diet. Now, I have to say, when I look at a lot of things on YouTube, about 80% of it plus is completely wrong. And actually, and I think dangerously so. What I have found, if you eat appropriately, if you eat according to the hand, if you eat whole food, often you find you're eating ketogenic anyway, you know. And then when people say to me, oh, ketogenic diet, that's the fat diet, isn't it? Then I know they've got it wrong completely.
Yeah.
You know? And they say, oh, I don't need vegetables. Well, actually, on the ketogenic diet, vegetables are extremely important because of the certain fats and fiber, minerals and vitamins in vegetables that are.
Very interesting.
Great. Yeah.
I love the hand thing. I learned so much about portions from you today and
Yes.
using my hand. I love it.
Yes, it's yeah. I have to say, I was in one particular conference and I made a bit of a joke and I just said, oh, look, you know, you've got 2 hands. If you lose one, you've still got another one. And then, oops, there was a person in the audience that actually didn't have an arm. And I thought, you know, oh, I can't use that one anymore. But, but actually, you know, that person came up to me at the end of the conference and actually said, oh, he said, thank you for not changing things because of me. He said, it makes me feel normal.
Oh,
So I thought, oh, you know, and then as he was walking away and he said, I've got a false hand I can use. You know, so all credit to that person, you know, but I'm a little bit careful now about where and when I say it.
great presentation, Anthony. It may be the smallest webinar we've done numbers wise, and it is one of the most entertaining and interesting. And I think, you know, again, a bit different from our usual offerings. You're a dear to do it, and I really learned a lot. Maybe others could speak for themselves. Yeah, Richard is raising his hands. You could put a chat note if you wish. We are completing our day. We're going to have our next webinar on the 6th of May on a Thursday. Our first ever webinar presenter is from the Philippines. Her name is Liesl Banyuag on flexible teaching and learning, embracing a better normal. And I am just thrilled to hear from Liesl. It's a far cry from nutrition and wellness, but it's the topic. I'm going to be thinking more about how this relates to our teaching lives, our research lives, our professional service lives, and travel and not traveling, and all of these issues that we're all dealing with now, because there's much more to say about nutrition. Hearty thanks to you, Anthony Pollitt.
No trouble. Enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Boyum, for being with us. Ms. Lynn for providing the tech. Linda Chu for being here as our helpful moderator too. I hope everybody has a nice evening there in Dubai, Anthony, and here on the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.